And what's going on, guys? It's the Minority Report. Today we are missing Marcus, but it's just me and Terrence. And we have very special guests, the LSU Staff Dietetics. Or if I said that correctly, something tells me I didn't say that correctly. Anyway, okay, I got Lauren Marucci and Zach, who are some of the top dietitians in NCAA college right now. Like, I love these guys. I worked with Lauren for 2 years during my basketball stint and during my GA-ship, and we formed a great relationship. I love everything they're doing right now, and everything she's been doing is great. And Zach is her fiance, and they have a great story for you guys. So why don't we just hop in right into it? Thank you guys for hopping on. So first question, all right, who are you guys other than the greatest couple in dietetics history?
We love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we met in grad school. So I guess I can talk about kind of my path to LSU, and then Lauren can talk about hers. And I guess through that, you could probably guess where we, met and started kind of dating and stuff like that. But so I grew up kind of in Georgia, and I did my undergrad degree in dietetics. I got a bachelor's in dietetics from University of Georgia. And from there, I went on to Florida State to get my master's in exercise science. And so they offered a paired internship with a master's degree, which was perfect for me because I was able to kind of knock those things out at the same time. That's where I met Lauren. She was doing the same thing. She kind of came a year after I did. So after I finished up at Florida State, I ended up going back to Georgia for a year, and I took a job, just kind of one of those stipend positions, year contract, got a lot of experience at Georgia. And then from there, I did a fellowship at the University of Michigan, worked with a ton of sports up there, spent about 8 months up there. And from there, I got hired full-time at University of Texas. So I was at University of Texas for about 2.5 years, worked with men's and women's basketball, track and field, and with football for about the past year, the last year I was there. And then from there, I got hired as director of football nutrition at LSU. So I've been here almost a little over a year now. And it's been kind of a crazy year to just hop on and kind of be part of that program. But so that's kind of my path to LSU, and throughout my career. Kind of been all over the place, worked with a ton of different sports. So I've got a lot of different experience, but all college experience for sure. Yeah,
that's awesome. All right. And then your turn, Lauren.
And so I am from Pittsburgh, originally, Pennsylvania. And I went to Penn State for my undergrad, and I absolutely loved it. And they have a really clinical heavy nutrition program. And so I shadowed countless dietitians in hospitals all over Pittsburgh when I would go home for breaks, and none of that really stuck with me. I didn't love doing that. So the summer before my senior year, my uncle was an athletic trainer at LSU, and he called me and asked if I wanted to come down and shadow the sports dietitian at the time. And I said, sure, why not? I'm open to any experience. So I came down for the summer and got to volunteer with Jamie Meeks. She's now with the Saints and Pelicans down in New Orleans. And she was awesome and totally inspired me to join this crazy world of performance nutrition. And so I decided I wanted to go to Florida State to get my master's degree and do the dietetic internship. So to become a registered dietitian, you have to complete an undergraduate didactic program in dietetics, and then apply for a dietetic internship, complete the internship, take your RD exam, and then you can go on your way. So I was lucky enough to get into Florida State, met Zach there, and had amazing experiences there. I got to do, one of my rotations was a sports nutrition rotation, and I did that at Exos out in Phoenix, Arizona, which was amazing. I loved it out there. Kind of like what Zach was saying, I got to work with so many different types of athletes. We had collegiate athletes of all sports, snowboarding, softball, baseball, football, basketball, all kinds of sports. There are professional athletes who work out there, general population, Olympic athletes, all kinds of stuff. So that was really, really cool. And then I matched with the Gatorade SNP program, so Sports Nutrition Immersion Program. and it's a fellowship program, and I matched with the Chicago Bears. So that was awesome. Moved from Phoenix to Chicago, so totally different climates. That's for sure, but both so cool to get to experience. So I was with them for probably 8 months or so, the full like regular season, and then a little bit into their spring-ish season. They don't really have a spring season, but a couple months in the spring. And then I came to LSU, and I've been here for a little over 3 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And for everybody who don't know, again, Zach works with the football team, and they just got their rings today. And of course, we saw it before we hit record. This is for the viewers, but I want to see it again. Okay, those rings look awesome. So let's talk rings, and then we can go ahead and give Terrence the mic, and he'll give some questions.
All right, so here's the hardware.
Humble bragging.
Yeah,
it's hard to be humble. It takes up like the whole screen, but
yeah.
they're pretty.
But yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, congratulations, and well deserved. Yeah, well deserved first year, and he gets 3 rings in a national championship under the best college football team ever, basically. Crazy. But yeah, no, I thought that's awesome. But let's pass the mic to Terrence.
Congratulations to you guys on that too, by the way. That's it's an awesome feat, man.
Yeah.
So here's a couple questions. What was you guys' first impressions of each other?
I can fill that question. So, I'd been at Florida State for a year already, and I kind of knew my way around. I was, big man on campus. I already knew everybody that was there. So Lauren came in that was new. And, you're going to scope out some of the new people, be like, oh, who's around? So my first impression, I saw Lauren, I was like, well, she's gorgeous. In my mind, I'm already thinking like, oh, this is a girl I'm going to marry for sure. Like that's,
oh, wow.
I already knew, and I was too young to know any better, but just from seeing her, I was like, yeah, for sure. So I went all out, and my whole goal was just, all right, I got to impress this girl and try to make it work. And I guess she can talk about her impression, probably a lot different.
Yeah, I feel bad, but we did have a class together that first semester, and I remember thinking like, oh, he seems to know, like he was easy to talk to, confident, like he knew all the professors. So I would get my group of friends with his group of friends, and we would talk about the different classes and all of that. So mine isn't as good, but he was nice.
Okay. The difference is crazy, but it all clicked together at the end.
Yeah,
that's all that matters, right? It all clicked together.
He impressed her enough to a ring, so it worked.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. And now it's crazy because now they're competing for not only rings, they're competing for national championship rings, because now they're just amassing it. Just sooner or later they're gonna have their room, a baby room, and then a ring room. It's gonna be crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
So in terms of like where your philosophies go, or even like how you view like the science and nutrition, do you guys often find yourself butting heads a lot, or would you say you pretty much on the same page a lot?
I feel like we're pretty much on the same page, and that's something too, not just between the two of us, but with the other 2 dietitians at LSU. We're lucky because we all agree on a similar, if not the same, philosophy, which I can talk about a little bit. So I know we really preach for food first. So a lot of times, especially athletes who are in college and they're running from practice to class to a nap to tutoring to dinner, back to practice, or, whatever, crazy schedules, they always want the quick fix, whether it's a supplement, a diet, some easy way out. And so the 4 of us really preach food first. And so before recommending any supplement or a crazy diet, we look at what they're currently doing and see if we can find ways a little bit more naturally to make some changes that might lead them to the changes that they are looking to get. So thankfully, we pretty much, the 2 of us, and then with the other 2 dietitians, have a similar nutrition philosophy, and we really just want what's best for the athlete. So so I don't think we butt heads too much.
No, and I'll add, I think, to as you work with different sports and different types of athletes, you kind of become an expert in those athletes. And so we lean on each other a lot because, Lauren's worked sports that I've never worked before. And the same can be said of me. So, as we specialize and we start to, get more in tune with the needs of these athletes and their personalities and what, their tendencies and things, we're fortunate that we can ask each other and say, hey, what did you do in this situation? I have this athlete, they have, eating issues or, they just don't care or whatever the problems arise. We're lucky because I have somebody I can bounce ideas off of. And I tell you what, some of the ideas that, I just by default have gotten credit for because I brought it to a team or something like that were Lauren's ideas and recipes that Lauren gave me, things like that. And so, when it comes to butting heads, I think really we're just two very open-minded people. Mm-hmm. So if there's a new supplement that comes out, if there's a new philosophy, a way of doing things, I think we both will just consider it straight up. We both read the research. We have discussions about it. It's really never a disagreement so much as us just kind of trying to figure out the value and where it fits into our philosophies. But yeah, we're both open-minded. And so we just try to, partner up and provide the best nutrition advice and care that we can, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Also stopping on Lauren's recipes. I do miss those protein balls like crazy. Yes. She used to make these great protein balls that we used to give to basketball players. And if there was 6 or 7, there was a bunch left, I would always take it to the room because then I would handle the food from there on. Oh my God, so good.
I'll just send you the recipe.
Okay, yes, thank you. I really appreciate that because I suck at baking and cooking, so I need recipes. I need direction. I need direction in my nutrition. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
No more bowls of cereal for you.
No more bowls of cereal. I do put bananas. I have some color in there. It's just not Cheerios anymore. I'm trying to put more fruits into my diet.
There you go.
Food first. Food first. Yeah. Colors are important. Anyway,
yes, they are.
Go ahead.
So people think working with athletes is the easiest thing in the world. Just I think it's just a bad stigma that we get. So what would you say a lot of the big problems that you run into with a lot of your collegiate players in terms of nutrition and structure and diets?
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of different answers to that question. I think generally speaking, a lot of them, and it's different everywhere you go, but a lot of them are used to eating a certain way. That's how they grew up. And this is, for most of them, their first time away from home. And so getting them to just try a new food is sometimes a lot. That's a big ask for them. That's a big thing. And a lot of them were the best player on their team in high school, and now they're not. They're amongst the other people who were the best player on their team in high school. So a lot of them come in and don't really understand the importance of nutrition. And so that can be a battle sometimes. Just getting them to understand that is a little bit tricky. Do you have anything?
Yeah. I think, those are great points. And we run into that every day. But I think too, a lot of these kids, like she was saying, kind of to follow up on that, they come from high school. They were the best athletes at their high school. They come in bullheaded. They know everything they need to know. They're here just to do their 2 years and then go pro or whatever it is. And so, it's hard to just convince a kid, hey, look, hot shot, you don't know everything yet. And just because you were successful in high school does not mean that you can be necessarily in college or in the pros. And you get a lot of kids too that just have, I think sometimes very elite athletes are also very elite compensators.
Yes.
And I think the strength and conditioning world can back that up, but you have some of these just absolute freak athletes that because of their natural born talent think I'm going to be able to just breeze through onto the next level and make it into the Hall of Fame. And, I even have heard from NFL athletes that are like, oh, nutrition really wasn't that important, wasn't something that helped me. And, look at what I was able to do. I was an all-pro, cornerback or D lineman. I went to a Super Bowl, whatever it is. And the argument that I think we make as dietitians, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning professionals, just support staff is, there are innate people that have that talent that can take them all the way to the top levels. But did you meet your expectations? Did you become the greatest athlete that you can become? Did you take advantage of every resource you have? Did you take every lift serious? Did you attack every rep? Did you take your nutrition serious? Because if not, you left some on the table. You know what I mean? So that to me is the biggest struggle that I have with athletes, is just trying to get them to realize, like, you're not competing against your talent, your other schools, your rivals, your teammates. You're competing against you. How good can you be? Why would you set a limit for yourself and just say, I'm not going to take nutrition as part of my performance, or, I don't really like to back squat, so I'm just not going to put that much effort into it. You know what I mean? So the more that you take advantage of the resources you have, then the sky's the limit,
I think it's hard too, because everyone, not just collegiate athletes, but everybody wants that immediate result. And with nutrition specifically, it takes time and you have to be consistent. It's not easy to change your diet or add more vegetables. As easy as it sounds, for some people that's really hard. And so for them to make that change every single day is a challenge. And then measuring results is tricky. Like with strength and conditioning, you can say, oh, okay, let's add weight to the bar. You're getting stronger, whatever. But with nutrition, it's harder to measure that, all that objective stuff. Like, why should we eat fruits and vegetables? It's hard to measure specific numbers for them to really comprehend the benefit.
Yeah. And then you have to look at sleep and recovery and all that other type of factors that play as well.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of deep underlying things that come into, like, trying to get people to actually do, like, anything when it comes to nutrition. It was like basketball players, like, talking about, like, being specific and stuff like that. Oh my God, we had some fun times with basketball players. Just making sure that they had something green. Like, if it was one piece of broccoli,
I know,
just one piece of broccoli, and you would have to put it on their plate. Like, this is exactly how it was. It's just interesting how these guys work and how they make sure that each and every single one of their players, like, gets the best out of it, even if it's just a little bit, because, like, that little bit they'll kind of see it. You know what I mean? Eventually they'll see it, and that's the main priority, I guess.
Yeah. And those little things go a long way. I did a grocery tour with one of our returning players today, and we just kind of walked around. I let him do his thing, and he grabbed fresh spinach, and he grabbed this frozen veggie lasagna. I was so shocked in a great way. Like, little things.
I actually was talking to Cavell. So Cavell was down in Dallas, and I was, like, training him a little bit, and I was helping him with his nutrition just a little bit. And, like, he was like, I got spinach, I got this. Like, you didn't even have to talk. I was so happy for him. I was like, bro, you never eat any of that stuff before. So, like, he got, like, it's great because, like, he got it. I mean, for years in the school, he finally understands how important it is. So eventually, if they don't see it, they'll eventually see it. How important it is, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure the freshmen are the hardest group to work with.
They are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anybody new is, you just gotta ease them into that culture. That's all it is.
And it's especially hard to motivate kids when, they may know for a fact that they're going to redshirt a certain year. So they're kind of just coasting, They come in, they have some all-star that's starting at their position. They're like, there's no way I'm going to get in and get minutes. And it's like, you got to try to motivate them, like, hey, look, you're not training this year for this year or next year. You're training for that senior year when you're competing for, a championship, trying to put your film out there. So it's just, we gotta help them understand that everything's a benefit if you take advantage of it.
For sure. I think that's
so
great.
What are some of the ways that you go about educating? Is there a lot of, like, seminars that you hold with your athletes? Do you have, like, weekly sit downs? Like, how is the structure of it set?
Yeah, so it's different for every team. So I can kind of talk about what I do with my teams, and then Zach can talk about football. So I oversee men's basketball, men's and women's swimming and diving, women's soccer, and then softball. And so each team is very different in terms of needs physiologically, personalities, food preferences, all that stuff. So with men's basketball, I do, now coronavirus has kind of thrown everyone for a loop. So pre-COVID, over the summer, they would come and train. I would do weekly team talks with them in small groups after their lift. And then I just communicate with them, texting, creating individual plans, meet with them individually throughout the summer. And then once season starts, I don't really want to take up too much time. So I do a lot more passive education. So I'll make signs to hang up in the locker room. This past year, one of our students who was helping me made a couple laminated signs with some of the pro NBA players, what they eat or their comments on diets. Obviously only positive things, just to kind of hang around and for the guys to hopefully read or, catch their eye. And then with my other teams, I do various team talks throughout the off seasons or even in season, fun little food demos just to get them to try new foods, whether it's like a green smoothie or this cookie dough dip that's actually made from chickpeas, little things, just to keep them interested. I like to do team talks, but I also don't like to get up and lecture for 60 minutes because their attention span is not that long. So any way that I can make it fun that makes them interested in it, usually having a snack with it helps because they all like to eat, which is good. So we do all kinds of different education for teams specifically, and then we have 3 fueling stations on campus. And so we'll hang up different education throughout those as well for them to read as they're getting a snack or, something like that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to me right now with working with football specifically, we do some of that passive education, making signs and education, just pieces like that. But I think the vast majority of my education comes just kind of one-on-one with these guys. Because I spend so much time at the facility and, in the dining hall with them on a daily basis. And so it's got its advantages and disadvantages. I think one of the advantages is obviously you're there and you have food in front of you. So you can physically show them like, hey, this is what your plate needs to look like, or this is what you need to eat before you go and work out, or this is called collagen. This is why we take this before a workout. Why would I take it before and not after? Things like that. So, I do, normally in the summers, barring the COVID crisis, we will have some team talks. We normally will do some cooking classes. We had those in the works. Just some life skills type stuff that can kind of attack more than one athlete. But especially during the year, it's kind of just a athlete by athlete basis. And fortunately, we kind of connect. We'll gather metrics. So we'll look at weight, we'll look at DEXA data, things like that. And so based on that, we can kind of approach kids and say, you might be a little overweight for your position, or you're drastically underweight for an SEC, whatever it is, DB or something like that. So using that data, we can kind of focus on the kids we need to. But yeah, football, it's just a lot more one-on-one. I think too, these kids, their schedules, much like basketball and the other sports, they're so full. And so, if you don't find a way to get in front of each kid in person, especially if they're important to their team success, then, they're just going to study the other things. They're going to look at their playbook. They're going to look at, they're going to do what their strength coach asks them to do. But you've got to kind of push yourself into the mix and say, hey, you got to take this seriously, and here are your main goals and things like that. But yeah, I think, we definitely, it's nice to have multiple dietitians at a university because we're able to attack both ends of that, like, for example, if an athlete of Lauren's, needs to ask a question, but Lauren's not in the dining hall, they know, oh, I see Zach. I know that, he's knowledgeable. I can tell him what my goal is, and then maybe he can help me out. And, vice versa. I don't think any football player is scared of Lauren, and they're happy. If they need any information, they can go ask her too. So.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, that pretty much, that would actually kind of went into one of my other questions where I was going to ask, so is it more so like you guys are educating about nutrition, and then based off of certain individuals' situation, you might do more like one-on-one coaching, or is it like a structure plan laid out, and then depending on like the positions, you might be playing around with maybe how the macros are set up, or like some of the meals? Like, how does the structure kind of go on that?
Yeah, usually with my teams, if I'm doing a talk with everybody or something with the whole team, I'll keep it pretty general and just talk about whatever nutrition topic they want me to talk about, or that I feel like they need to be a little bit more educated on. And then if it's something that an individual has a question on, we'll meet one-on-one. Zach kind of mentioned the DEXA before, so that's how we measure our body composition at LSU. And so we DEXA scan all of our athletes 1 to 3 times a year, depending on the team. And we strategically pick the time points that we do scan. So for example, with men's basketball, I'll scan them at the beginning of summer and at the end. And then we look at the difference, because that's when they do a lot of their heavier training in the weight room. And, with swimming, I'll do it when they come back to school and for the fall, after their mid-season meet, and then after their SEC or conference meet, just so we can correlate body composition to those specific performance time periods. And so that's a huge thing that I'll have individual consults on is body composition. So if it's a broad topic, like what to eat after a workout or best ways to recover with nutrition, I'll do with everybody. Even if I know so-and-so has perfected that, in my mind, it doesn't hurt to hear it multiple times. So I'll kind of beat a dead horse, or whatever the saying is, just so that they get it. And then more one-on-one conversations, or they'll come to me, or if a coach says, hey, so-and-so was struggling during practice, she looked pretty gassed, can you meet with her or see if it's something food related? So that's when I'll do the one-on-one education.
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off of that, I kind of reserve one-on-one education. It really just depends on number one, the athlete's readiness to change. And so, if I've got an athlete who their diet is very poor, they've got low vitamin D, low iron, stuff like that, I'm just going to start with the basics and say, hey, can you eat breakfast every day? Let's work on that, So number one is their readiness to change. If they're kind of set in their ways and they're not really ready to do a lot of changes, and they're already changing the way they live life because they've come to college for the first time and stuff like that, I start off with very basic stuff. And so it's really not, I'm definitely not dealing with macronutrients. I learned my lesson hard one time when I had an athlete come in. We did a whole consult. I mapped him out, wrote him a meal plan, everything like that. And at the end I said, okay, so, what are some foods that you could have as a night snack that are high in protein? And he was like, a banana. So, I had gone through this whole meal plan, right? And he didn't even know what a carb was. So, the other thing that's a huge factor is their level of knowledge. I mean, you can't assume these kids know anything. I mean, they're 18 years old. I didn't know what a carb was. When I was in high school. So, when they come in, you've got to start very basic. And it's just like strength conditioning. When these kids come in, they can't do advanced movements a lot of the time. Some of them have, lifted a dumbbell and they think it's a barbell. So, it's the same thing. You have to start with the very basics, and then you can work your way up. And as athletes get really elite, you go from, teaching them what a carb looks like, what a good plate should look like for practice, before, after. And then you get into things like, as they become seniors and a lot more mature, you can talk about things like creatine, beta alanine, things that can just kind of enhance their workout, like sprinkles on the cupcake. So, it's really just more of looking at their readiness to change, what stage they're in, and then their level of knowledge, I think.
Yeah. I think just going, because we're talking a lot about strength conditioning, how important is that relationship between the strength staff and the nutrition staff for the overall well-being of athletes that both you guys have? Because I know you have a large strength staff in general. So how does that communication, how does that stuff work out for you guys?
It's super important. And I'm going to throw athletic training in there too, because those people, the strength coach and the athletic trainer, tend to be around more often just because there's more of them with each team, whereas there's only 4 of us for 470 athletes, whereas each strength coach has about 2 teams, and then athletic training has 1 team each. So they're really our eyes and ears, and I heavily rely on them. Like Greg Golden with men's basketball is like my best friend, and we talk about, like, I'll say, oh, I heard so-and-so said this, or he'll say, so-and-so was really, really sluggish today at lifts, like, just FYI, I don't think he ate breakfast, or, whatever. And same goes with my other sports too. So it's super important to have that good relationship, because they're around more often. With my teams, I know Zach is around a lot with football, but they see a lot more, and they can develop really close relationships with the athletes too. So if I need someone to work on eating breakfast every day for a couple weeks to start out, I'll really rely on the strength coach and or the athletic trainer to help remind them and help enforce, what we're talking about individually in my office, just helping to reinforce all those messages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think too, it's important to involve mental health, because those aspects. So if you take athletic training, strength conditioning, nutrition, mental health, those are kind of the pieces of the puzzle that make up the whole athlete. And so, in order to make these, if our goal is to make these athletes self-sufficient, reach their peak, training at their highest, functioning completely at their highest, I think it's important for it to have heavy communication between all those different departments, because, everything affects everything else, so you might have, strength conditioning might have a max day lined up, but if the kid hasn't done proper recovery the past few days, and if they didn't have a good dinner the night before, they didn't fuel yourself morning of, well, your strength numbers, you're going to be like, why did this D lineman squat less than he did last time? Well, maybe he has better muscle development, but he just didn't prepare himself coming down the stretch. And then, it's the same thing going into the training room. Why do we have this overuse injury? I felt like I was training this kid appropriately, but maybe they had a lack of recovery, or, kind of above it all, why is this kid just lackluster effort in the weight room, not showing up to appointments, really struggling with schoolwork? So, it's really important to communicate, because as a dietitian, as each single person, you don't see the whole picture. You might think you do, but this kid might be in somebody's office crying because their grandma just died and their mom's having a tough time and blah, blah, blah. When also at the same time, you might have a kid who can never, real sluggish in the morning, doesn't understand what's going on, but they've literally never eaten breakfast before. So, the more you can communicate and we learn more about athletes that way, I think the more impact we can have on their performance. And you can't just, I think in the past it was more of all right, I'm going to focus on the things that I, know and can help with. And now it's like, okay, let me interact with these other people, make sure things are firing on all cylinders, and then, can adjust programming based on that. If an athlete misses a lift or something like that, I don't want them eating a performance plate for lunch. I want them being a little bit smarter because they weren't able to train that day. So it's going to be a different looking day. So it's a super important interaction to make sure you have good relationships. And honestly, you get the best out of those athletes when all those people have good communication and have a great relationship.
For sure.
Yeah, I always say that even in the case of like personal training, the clients that get the best results are the ones I know the most about. So if I know the most about them, we communicate on a high level, it's going to be easier to work with that person opposed to just trying to figure out what's going on all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Terrence, you got anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to speak about so Lauren, you worked in the NFL for a couple years, I saw.
Yes.
Yeah, so would you say you noticed a big difference in training, with nutritional coaching with the professional athletes compared to like the collegiate athletes?
Yes and no. I feel like they there were some similarities and some differences. I feel like in the professional realm that I was in, it's their job, and so they've worked really hard to get there, and they could get fired or cut, whatever. Whereas in collegiate, it's a little bit more lenient. So they have a little bit more wiggle room. But in professional, some of the athletes, especially the older ones, who I think started to realize that nutrition is important, they really took it seriously and would really think about it and ask really good questions and for advice and supplements and all that stuff. Whereas in collegiate, it's a little bit more kind of like we were talking about earlier. They feel like they're invincible and they can eat a burger and fries or go get sushi before a game and it'll be totally fine. You know, they'll really do whatever they want. Whereas in professional, it seemed like they took it a little bit more seriously. Not that collegiate athletes don't take it seriously, because they do. But you just have that, it's a job on the line kind of thing. But yeah, I feel like a lot of them too in professional, now that sports nutrition has become more popular and more widespread, a lot of them had worked with a dietitian in college. And so they kind of knew already, you know, the gist, and they knew who to go for if they had a supplement question. Because sometimes we'll have athletes who go to the strength coach or the athletic trainer who will then refer them to us. In the professional setting, the ones who had worked with a dietitian before kind of knew the drill, and they were pretty much good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Would you what was the question I just had?
Come on, man.
Well,
Pressure, bro. Pressure, bro.
So in a sense of, you know, the difference with women and men, would you say that the women are a little easier to work with in the sense of men? Would you say they follow the plans a little easier, or even in the case of like how you structure some of the diets, being that there's different physiological changes between men and women? What are some things you would see in a diet plan that might be a little different in women's than you would for a man's, outside of just like calorie consumption?
So I really look, the way I tailor my advice or plans, whatever, to my athletes is really just their readiness to change level, regardless of male or female.
Okay.
But so, you know, I'll get detailed if it's a guy or a girl, whatever. I'll get as detailed as they want me to go, or keep it as basic as they can handle. But I know with my female athletes, stuff that the biggest thing I look for is iron in their diet compared to men. Since females get a period every month, they're losing some iron. So I just make sure that they're getting enough in their diet. And then also we do the DEXA scans, so we can also tell their bone mineral density from that. So we'll look at that, see where that's at, and then I might prescribe, and this could go for guys too. But we could supplement some calcium and vitamin D. But females, we tend to have lower bone mineral density than guys, so that's something a little bit more female specific. Do you have anything for guys?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, all athletes are different, so it's tough to generalize. But I think in general, when you're talking differences between genders, you get a lot more tendency for males to eat like a lot of meat. I think the common thing is for guys to think, oh, I need to bulk up and get really big, and so in order to do that, I need to eat a ton of protein, a ton of meat. And on the flip side, you get females that are like, ooh, I don't want to get too bulky. I want to stay at where I am, or, and so they will avoid a high protein or things like that. And so, I've even come across female athletes that are afraid to have a recovery beverage after their lift because they're, they think it's going to make them bulk up. So I think some of those just it's misinterpretations is what it is. And a lot of athletes just need to be educated on, okay, first of all, guys, 800 grams of protein is not going to help you bulk up. It's just going to help you poop a brick at the end of the day. And females, don't be scared of protein. It's not, no bodybuilder ever became how they are just because they took extra protein, right? So, and then, so that's just one example of differences. But because of those tendencies in the genders, that's kind of some of the nutritional differences Lauren was talking about earlier, because a lot of iron comes from meat products. And so, ironically, women lose more iron through blood So they tend to have lower iron. And then men on the flip side will rarely have low iron unless they're kind of turning over iron faster, but they're consuming way more than they need because they're, trying to meet a certain goal that they've put in their head. So, I think in general, you find athletes in both genders that take things very seriously and then athletes that just don't. So when it comes to that, I think you get a lot of, it's kind of a scale where you can find athletes all over the place, but there are some subtle differences between genders, and you just kind of have to go in knowing that and learn more about the athlete and then make judgment calls based on what you hear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I actually wanted to bring it back to schooling. So for anybody that wants to get into be exactly who you guys are, I know there's very intensive schooling that comes into being a sports nutritionist. So can you go about like how you guys first was like, this is exactly what I want to do, and the schooling and all the education you guys had to do to get there?
Yeah. So like I think I said earlier, so when you're looking at undergraduate programs, they all might have a nutrition program undergraduate, but it has to be certified. So that's called a didactic program in dietetics, or a DPD program. Not all major universities have that. But we were lucky enough to go to Georgia and Penn State, which both do have that. So once you get that, it's the fall of your senior year is when we started looking at internships. So once you complete the DPD program, you have to apply for a dietetic internship. And that's a little tricky, and there's a lot of stress that comes along with that because I don't know if it's changed, but when we were applying, only 50% of the people who apply actually get matched. And it's this whole matching process where you rank your top however many programs and they rank you and you have to match up. It's this crazy thing. So once you jump over that hurdle, you can do your internship and then sit for the registered dietitian exam at the end of that. Internships vary in length. Some are as short as 8 or 9 months, and then some have a master's component with them, like ours did at Florida State. And so that could take longer, but ours took about 2-ish years. So then you can take your RD exam, and then once you pass that, if you want to really specialize in sports, there is a CSSD exam, so Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics. And that you can take, I think they just changed it. I think you need 2,000 hours now of supervised experience, or 2 years of being a dietitian working in a sports setting. Since we work a ton of hours, we definitely had more than enough hours before the 2-year mark, but you have to be a dietitian for 2 years. So then you can take that exam, and that we take every 5 years just to keep current on all the trendy sports nutrition stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a crazy.
That's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours.
I'll add to we, in order to kind of, I think both of us, in order to kind of allow us to relate to, like we were talking about that performance team earlier, we both ended up sitting for our CSCS exam. And, I don't think either of us would necessarily at this point be comfortable writing a program for a collegiate athlete in terms of strength conditioning. But what it does do is it kind of allows us to be more knowledgeable on kind of the topics that, strength coaches go through. So we can kind of speak their language, if that makes sense. So, if somebody's talking about, high intensity day, or we're going to have an active recovery day, or, today is we're working power more than strength. Today's a speed day, something like that. We can kind of tailor our nutrition guidelines to meet that, that training session. So, you don't necessarily need a 1,200 calorie smoothie after you do an active recovery day, right? So, just be more knowledgeable on that level, at the same time. And I think too, the same thing can be said of some strength coaches. I know that some people will do like online certifications, things like that. And so, while that doesn't qualify necessarily someone to give nutrition advice to athletes, right? Meal plans, things like that. It does allow you to, if you're in a setting where you work with nutrition professionals, you can let, a dietitian know, like, hey, I've noticed that so-and-so doesn't like to have protein after their lift. That might be something to keep an eye out for. Or, Hey, I saw that you were, giving out Beat Elite, and that's something that I researched, and I think it would be appropriate for this day that we're planning next week or something like that. So, it's a fine balance between knowing your role and also being knowledgeable on other topics. So by the same token, I would never go to Coach Moffitt and say, hey, I think we need to do more split jerks in our lifts, right? I'm not involved in writing that program. He's got a whole plan for the athletes. And so that, I'm not in the right place there. But, if I have an athlete come ask me a question and say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing curls? That's a situation where I could say, well, you can talk to your coaches about that and they can tell you more specifics, but I know that exercise works this, and that's probably the goal they're trying to achieve there. So it's very similar. When athletes ask strength coaches a nutrition question, I don't want my strength coaches to be afraid to be like, bananas have carbs, and that's why you took that, but don't tell me Zach's the boss, So they're you can kind of fill information, but it just allows you to kind of relate better to that team and have better communication, better relationships, things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's very important. I think the communication that Lauren had with Coach Golden and me when I was there was great. Like, we always talked about what people needed, what we needed from her, what she needed from us, and it was always fun. I do miss those times, by the way.
I know.
I do miss those times.
All the catering food, but
oh my God, the catering.
Going down memory lane, Evan.
You said what?
Going down memory lane.
Yeah, going down memory lane. But what did you say, Zach? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it like everybody thought.
I was saying results kind of speak for themselves, right? So you guys had a great relationship.
Yeah.
Berth in the NCAA tournament, won the SEC outright. It just goes.
Yeah.
When you have those relationships, results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I should have put on my ring. We should all have our rings on. It'd be awesome. And just leave Terrence in the dust. It'll be shining and just Terrence there. No, I'm just playing. But Terrence, you got any more questions for these guys?
Just the last question I would just ask, real basic, is what's something that you wish somebody told you about in this field before you got there? Like something that you kind of learned in the field beforehand that you can't learn from a book.
Man, you got good questions, man.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think I wish that somebody had just – I think when I went through school, I really paid attention to classes, and I was like, all right, I need to learn this stuff. And it is important, like I've used my organic chemistry more than I ever thought I would as a dietitian. But one of the things that I just didn't – it never crossed my mind until I got into the professional world is how many things you have to do as a professional that have nothing to do with what you learned in school. Right? So I'm as of right now with this coronavirus crisis, I'm learning I literally learned how to rivet so that I could put like hasp locks on certain things so kids can't get in, and get their hands in our food where it shouldn't be. I'm driving a 14 passenger van to deliver meals, learning how to back that thing up without a camera. Things that, you go through school and they're like, okay, so this is how you write a meal plan. And then you get behind the wheel of, a golf cart and you've got a face shield on and gloves. And you're like, okay, how did I get here? Where I'm not prepared for it. But I think, so the biggest thing is just being adaptable, and being a lifelong learner. You're not done after you leave school. And if you are, then you're not going to be you're not going to be effective at anything that you're trying to do. And you can't just keep learning in your field. You've got to open your mind and really be open to any new research, anything that comes out. You just got to say, hey, wow, this is something I want to look more into, because it just makes you a better professional. And I think, as we were all probably interns at one point, and we looked up to the people that we worked for, and you can tell, whether it's somebody who, wrote this program 20 years ago. They've been doing the same program for 20 years. There's no new adaptations. And they're like, look, this worked. We won a national championship in 1980. And, we've been doing the same thing ever since. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to compete in today's athletic world, you got to be adaptable. You have to involve new processes as they start to work, or otherwise you're going to get outworked. Because other people are going to come along that are experts in it, and they're going to say, look, we're doing ankle mobility twice a week or something like that. And you're like, well, that wasn't what we did in 1980. We ate cheeseburgers and we won a national championship, Well, guess what? That's not what other teams are doing now. So now you're behind the times. So just that adaptability factor, being open to learn anything and everything that can make you better, I think will go a long way, and people will notice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Along with adaptability on that scale, something that they don't teach you in school is that you have to be flexible specifically with sports nutrition. Things change at the drop of a hat, and schedules change. And so like the caterer doesn't show up, or, whatever the situation may be. And so generally speaking, with dietitians, we can be very type A, and we like to have things organized and good to go. We plan in advance and it works out. But especially in our field, it doesn't happen like that in reality all the time. Not that I don't know like what someone would teach you necessarily, but just to kind of roll with it, and just to be able to think on your feet. And then also too, in school, it's very methodical, and everything is written out with case studies, like so-and-so has diabetes, write out a tube feed for them, whatever. And it's very black and white, but in reality, everything is so gray. Especially with athletes, there's so many different things that could be going on. If someone, I don't know, is tired all the time, that's so vague. It could be they're not sleeping. It could be they're not eating. It could be they're overtraining. Like there's so many possibilities. And so I think being able to think outside the box, like Zach was saying, and using your resources like you guys, athletic training, mental health, and just coming together to kind of solve the problem, instead of thinking, okay, they need 5 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate and all that stuff. Because that's, it's good to know for sure and to have, but they don't really know what that means.
Yeah. No, I talking about type A methodical, the tables that we used to have for LSU men's basketball, peanut butter would lined up perfectly. It had to be, and like the amount of, it was special, the amount of peanut butter to jelly ratio that Lauren would have in her peanut butter jelly. Like it was perfect every time. It was crazy. But it's science. It's science. It's that 5 grams of carbs right there or whatever. Like she would measure it perfectly every time. She knew how much 5 grams of carbs of peanut butter was, and she put it on there or whatever. Yeah. But Terrence, do you have anything else, or is that the last one? Okay. I have one more question. When's the date, and when do I get an invitation?
We actually, so coronavirus has like thrown this whole thing off, and we don't want to plan for next year, and then coronavirus, God forbid, comes back. And a lot of people had to push, like Olivia and Greg pushed their date back a whole year. So we're waiting until 2022. That's all we know.
Okay.
We don't have anything else, which is that can be a little bit more stressful, because we can't plan anything unless we have a venue and a date and all that stuff. But I'm learning a lot about weddings, and I never realized how much really goes into it.
I heard it's crazy. I heard it's a lot. But I think that's all we have for you guys. So again, thank you guys for hopping on. I thought it was really informative. Knowledge bombs were dropped all over the place. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. This is for the viewers. I should have said it from the start, but I always forget. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on the Coach's Vault. Follow us on like and subscribe this, and also go check up our blog, the Coach's Vault, when you have a chance. This will be up very soon. And again, thank you guys. Good luck with everything. Good luck with the season. And hopefully we get college football this year, or I would flip. I would literally flip if we don't have college football this year. You said what?
And basketball.
Basketball. Of course, that's important, but I'm just saying, like, one thing at a time, Lauren, and college football starts first. I know. Yeah. Okay. But thank you. Yes, we need to get this ready. We need to put on your mask, do what you need to do. If it has an LSU Tiger on it, then you're doing the right thing. That's all it is. Give Mike a mask. I don't care. Everybody needs to wear a mask.
Oh, I know.
Okay. And Terrence, if you didn't know, on LSU campus there is also a live tiger. I mean, live tiger.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike's the tiger. Anyway, okay, thank you guys for hopping on. I'll see you guys very soon, and good luck with everything.
Good.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.